Ladies and gentlemen, is going to talk about tokenization solution for omnichannel businesses, and we have our esteemed speaker, Ms. Tanya Naik, head online and omnichannel business Pine Labs with us. So we shall invite her over up here on the stage for the next product launch. I request the ones who would like to stay to kindly settle down. And I think a lot of networking can continue, but outside of this hall room. All right, so here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, once again a warm welcome. Global Fintech Fest will resume now to its product launch segment. And as discussed, tokenization solution for omnichannel businesses. May we please request the gentleman, sorry sir, we want to continue ahead and we would really appreciate if this networking happens outside of this conference room. All right, please put your hands together for Ms. Tanya Naik, Head Online and Omnichannel Businesses, Pine Labs, for the presentation.
No, that's okay. What about the presentation? Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, thank you for letting us speak on a subject which is extremely topical, thanks to the advent of the guidelines that are expected to hit all e-commerce businesses by 1st of October, that is tokenization. What we're about to present to you is a solution that enables the benefits of tokenization to transcend into businesses that are available both online and offline. If we could move to the next slide. Yep. The next one. Right. So just a quick recap on what tokenization does. Simply put, it's an alias for a consumer card in the merchant ecosystem. Not very different from the way a UPI VPA is created for an underlying bank account, except that that UPI VPA, which is truly interoperable across the entire network that operates within the banking ecosystem, the tokenized card only operates at a singular merchant level. And that's where truly the complication, sort of arises. The reason why the guideline was introduced was primarily to make sure that online e-commerce transactions are far more secure. Merchants who store consumer data, especially card credentials, have a much more secure way of storing it. And only those merchants who are able to tokenize the card with a network can technically store that token and give a better checkout experience to their merchants. But what really happens when the merchant operates both online and offline? Currently, the guideline only covers what is known as the online e-commerce merchant, which is in the card not present world, where you and I go to a merchant and actually use the card at checkout. But the same merchant currently operates in the offline world, which is the card present world as well. Why not give the benefit of the saved card experience and not really let the consumer tap or swipe the card and give him a preferred checkout even at point of sale? So here are two use cases. If you move to the next slide. And by the way, tokenization has taken off in a big way since the advent of the guideline. Some of the numbers that you saw on the previous slide are absolutely staggering. To quote a few of them, Master and Visa collectively have now tokenized close to about 200 million tokens till date. And globally, Visa has now tokenized close to 4 billion tokens, which is more than the total number of issued cards till date. So obviously, it has taken off in a big way because merchants do realize the need to create a much secure and a much faster checkout experience. But as I said, the problem exists with merchants that work both online and offline. And in order to provide for them, we have what we call as the tokenization solve for omnichannel businesses. And we want to show you two specific product demos today. One for the travel and hotel industry, This particular demo is very, very relevant because when you go to a hotel, you obviously don't book the transaction at the time of going to the hotel. You pre-book your stay in a OTA, or you would go to the hotel website and pre-book your stay, and then at the time of the actual check-in is when you would actually pay for the remainder transaction. But as I explained to you the whole complication, if you couldn't actually pass the token from the offline world or the online world to the offline world, how is it that the consumer is going to be able to check out seamlessly like he was doing before? So here's one demo which will show you the benefit of what we call the omnichannel solution for hotels and travel through tokenization. Music. What about the music? Can you play the music as well? So what you can see here is where the consumer has first gone and opted to reserve his booking at an OTA website, not very different from what each one of us do or go to the hotel. At this point of time, what you can see is the user actually not just authorizing the transaction for his booking, but also simultaneously tokenizing the card so that we can store that token at our end in Plural. Once that happens, Plural has stored these card credentials and made sure that those transaction details are sent to the hotel. At step 2 is where the consumer enjoys the stay and checks out of the hotel, no different from what he would have done in the earlier stage before tokenization. This is what the hotel sees at the back end. As soon as the card gets tokenized, the merchant actually is able to look at the hotel booking and the associated card with the hotel booking. And at the time of checkout, with what we know in the hotel and travel industry as a Moto transaction, able to continue and complete the transaction without second factor authentication. Let's look at the other scenario where the consumer doesn't wish to actually use the remainder booking because, like many of us, we choose to book and then choose to cancel at the last minute. When that happens, the same solution works. The same Moto transaction is actually used to cancel the earlier booking, which was tokenized. And as you can see, the cancellation charge, which was earlier applicable, even in the pre-tokenization world, was able to be levied in the post-tokens world. That's a pictorial representation of how the pre-tokenized world was working, where the booking was done on the OTA. The transaction, which included the card credentials, was sent to the hotel. All the details of the hotel, all the hotel details, including the card credentials, were stored on the direct hotel web, the hotel management software, and then used to pay at checkout. And what happens in the post-tokenization world, where we, using the token feature, are able to not just convert the card into token, but also able to convert the transaction into a Moto under the applicable RBI guidelines and still provide for a seamless checkout. There is absolutely no impact with respect to the way the consumer was able to book the hotel pre and post tokenization. And that, to our mind, is truly powerful, given the way the travel industry works today. An important point to highlight here is that the only exemption in the tokenized world for hotels is for corporate cards, or B2B solutions as we call it, or the GDS way of booking, where all of these corporate cards were stored with travel agents. Unfortunately, many of us like to go to hotel websites or go to a Make My Trip or a Booking.com and still do our bookings. And that's where no solution or no exemption exists except this. That's example number 1. And here's another example, which to our mind wasn't really a truly, I wouldn't call it something which was not so great, but we just wanted to bring a better, more contextual experience to what we call as the endless aisle example for omnichannel retail. Here's a look at how one could do a booking today for an Apple phone. You go to the retail store, you scan the QR, as you would normally do. At the time of scanning, you would once again be able to tokenize the card in the form of a card not present transaction. Once stored, the consumer's token is also stored at the merchant through Plural. And on the day of the launch, when he has to pay the remaining amount of the Apple product or any other product, he receives the payment link that is linked to the original transaction, completes the transaction just like any other payment link transaction, but without the need to re-enter his card credentials. The solution, I may add, works on EMI as well and pay later. And there you have it. The iPhone 2, iPhone 14 has been successfully completed, the transactions booked, and the delivery will go as per plan. This, to our mind, is again pretty unique because it not only allows the same merchant to have a truly omni-channel experience for their consumers, but for the consumer not to enter card credentials every time, not to have to tap the card both in the offline world and not to have to again enter the card credentials in the online world as well. Given our presence both in the offline and online world, the fact that we could make the same consumer go through a seamless checkout is again pretty unique and pretty powerful. Next slide. All right, so there you have it. Two solutions, both in the omni-channel merchant space, one for hotel and travel, one for omni-channel retail, one which is a true consumer and a merchant pain point, especially in the hotel industry, one that we believe will enhance the experience of the consumer in a retail checkout, and both that are available in the Pine Labs ecosystem because of our presence both online and offline. So thank you very much. Thanks for your time. I'll open the floor up for any questions. All right. Yep. Yeah.
In the retail workflow at the final payment, there was a requirement to enter the CVV.
Yeah.
But in the hotel example,
Yeah.
there was obviously
Not
the
in
card
the
was
final, not in the final stage. The CVV was only required to be entered at the time of the tokenization of the card and the initial
okay. I
booking.
think I saw that in the video that when the
Not
42,000 payment came, then also it showed that.
Oh, you're talking about the endless aisle, that
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
So
retail.
that one actually is, as I said, it's not really in the form of a no OTP, no
CVV,
authentication
yeah.
checkout. It actually just enables the same consumer to link his original transaction
Yeah.
and not to have to enter saved card again, or not to have to do it again because the merchant today is present both online and offline. So if he's completed the transaction in the offline world, given that we now have the stored card,
Yeah.
we were able to offer the same consumer a better checkout experience in the online world.
the
But that doesn't mean that the authentication doesn't happen again.
And in the hotel example,
That's possible because of the regulatory restriction doesn't exist. So you can always process that transaction as a motor transaction in travel, which you can't do in
yeah,
retail.
because there was no added authentication done
That's
at the time of
correct.
checkout in
That's
the case
correct.
of the hotel.
That's right. That's not, so that's the relaxation that's available
Okay.
in the hotel industry, but not so much in retail.
In the first, the travel example, what
Yeah.
just a different workflow maybe, but let's say when you are at the booking stage, so rather than doing a pre-auth or whatever, so if there's a case where there's a 25% advance to be paid,
Yeah.
right, and there's no other blocking of funds happening, right? So it's actually the ulta of the iPhone example. It's actually
Yeah.
an online first and then offline.
So in the hotel example, it's actually online first. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. And because you can tokenize the card and also do a transaction auth of an amount in the same workflow, you were able to also pre-book a certain amount. Even in the second example, you could do that. So for example, when you are actually scanning the QR on the POS machine, you could decide the pre-booked amount. So you could book it for like 6,000 when the product is worth 42,000 and you only pay 38,000 or 36,000 during the final checkout.
Yeah, but the question is, when you check out at the hotel, would there be a payment link sent for the balance amount? Because the hotel can't on their own
No.
ahead.
At the checkout at the hotel, as you saw, we actually did a Moto transaction. So there was no need for him to enter or make a payment link transaction. And we actually were able to integrate it with the hotel's dashboard itself. So when he clicks that, he's ready to check out, we actually executed the Moto transaction as well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Second question is that the consumer have to enter their QR code plus CVV plus OTP,
Yeah.
which in my experience is cumbersome versus just scanning my card on the device.
So, that's exactly the point. Today, in the Omni retail example, actually, there is no guideline which allows the tap and pay card, the tap and pay transaction, or the swipe transaction to get tokenized. And which is why you had to actually scan a QR and generate another link which was able to tokenize the card at that point of time.
And the scanning is happening on the device, but the
Yeah.
app is consumer app, merchant app.
No. So when you scan, you're actually creating a payment link transaction again. You're not actually scanning it on another app. So it's no different from you taking a QR and scanning it and a payment link opening up.
Got it. So
on
I'm
the
scanning on my
consumer's-
camera
That's right.
and I'm clicking on the link
That's right.
and then I'm tokenizing that.
And because we already have pre-fed the transaction details, we would only need the consumer to enter his card number and tokenize it.
And next time I'm visiting the store, when
Yeah.
I scan that QR, do I
It would
need-
already be available
will
because
be
it's
tokenized.
tokenized. Yep.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
For the hotel example, suppose the customer didn't turn up and he forgot to cancel also.
Yeah.
Will the amount get debited from his account?
No. So when the customer doesn't turn up and then he forgets to cancel also, the transaction stays in initiated stage. Because he would have either done a token booking, which is like a rupee-1 or a $1 authorization,
Yeah.
or he would have, let's say, 5,000 rupees blocked.
But it's a Moto transaction, right?
No, that is at the time of checkout, right? So depending on what the hotel's norms are, they could
suppose
end
at
up
the time of
cancelling
the
it
checkout-
after. So I'll tell you how that
Yeah.
will work. So let's say that the hotel has a policy that if you don't confirm the transaction within, say, 60 days, we have the facility to either charge your card or cancel the card, cancel the transaction. So depending on that policy, because we've already tokenized and authed the transaction, the earlier transaction, the hotel will be in a right to execute the Moto based on what they've signed up with the customer. So that would either mean cancelling it because they would have signed up with the customer saying we'll cancel after 60 days, or they will end up charging if that was the contract that was signed with the customer.
Okay, got it.
So that's the benefit actually of tokenizing at the first go, because you would be able to do that without requesting for authentication later.
It's beneficial for the hotel, but
Definitely.
But for
it
the
is.
customer side, suppose right now today I have gone for a contract that I'll be visiting the hotel after 60 days. Now something happens and I don't turn up,
Yeah.
right? I end up losing my entire money. And because
So,
I have
actually,
already given the right to the hotel.
Yeah, so actually, the reason why, and most of these OTAs now have moved to full transaction blocking. In this solution, you don't need to block the whole transaction. You just can block 1 rupee, or you can just block as a pre-booked amount of, say, 5,000 or token amount, as most hotels take. So technically speaking, you don't need to book for the whole amount. And the consumer can then enjoy a better experience, because if he's not sure of the booking, he will only have lost a part of the amount and not the full amount.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Follow-up question. If you're just
Yeah.
using it for 1 rupee and the
Yeah.
customer doesn't have credit limit at the time of checkout, what happens then?
It gets declined and it results in another follow-up, which is no different from any other hotel transaction.
Yeah, it's a 1 rupee transaction plus customer doesn't have credit limit at that particular time.
Right. So the auth which happens, and maybe Somalia, you can explain how this happens in the hotel. So Somalia, who I'd like to introduce to you, is our head of product. Maybe you want to come in here.
So what will happen is if you don't have credit limit, so first of all, banks have a policy of over limit charges and all. So yeah, there are few banks which can, let's say, you have a 10,000 limit and the final amount, let's say, it's 15,000. So either they process as a 15,000 debit in the issuer side, or else what will happen is that will get declined, and you as a customer, you will be charged as a over limit charge. And then when the limit comes back, so there will be a mechanism of retrials and all. But that will kind of impact your credit history and all those things. So as a customer, you have to kind of ensure that limit is there.
Suppose the hotel.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, kind of, yes.
Suppose the hotel rent is around 10,000
Yeah.
and I don't have 10,000 at this point of time in my bank account, then the transaction pre-auth will not happen?
So these transactions are typically linked for your credit cards, not for debit cards. So pre-auth and all this cancellation happens on credit cards itself. Because
Okay, so
I
this is
can't.
not applicable for debit card?
No, this will not.
You
be
can't do
applicable.
pre-auth.
Pre-auth and
Ah,
all these
only-
limit-based transactions cannot be.
So right now, suppose my limit is below 10,000, suppose. So transaction will not go through even if, there is a rupee 2 or rupee 1 authentication happening.
No, when you are doing the booking, so it's let's say a 1 rupee, 2 rupee transaction that will go through. Now, let's say if you don't turn up, there can be, let's say, one scenario is that it can be no-show charges. It's how typically, like when you book that, let's say the hotel, let's say you book for 5 days, and in the terms and conditions, it will, the hotel, whichever hotel, like the institution is, they will clearly mention you. Like, let's say before 5 days or 3 days, if you don't cancel, then you will have to pay, let's say, one night of room rent, or let's say 25%. That's typically a entire policy of the hotel. Now, let's say if you don't have, like, you did not turn up, you did not cancel it. Now, let's say it's a complete no-show. You did not, as a customer, you did not turn up. Then what will happen is that, like, if you don't have the credit limit, then it's like the transaction will not go through. But eventually the hotel will start retrying that. But as a customer, you have to understand is that issuing banks take those calls, right? Because somebody will let you do an overdraft or over limit of the actual limit, and some banks have a policy that they don't allow it. And eventually it will impact, let's say, somebody who doesn't limit it, and you are kind of getting hits on like limits which you don't have. That will kind of impact your CIBIL and your credit history. So I hope I answered you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for patiently listening to us. Hope this was of interest to you. And we're always available outside for any further Q&A that you may have on the subject. But thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for joining in for this session, and thank you Ms. Tanya for having addressed this lovely tokenization concept with Pine Labs. Ladies and gentlemen, one last session in this hall room.